Welcome everyone for today's study. It's always a pleasure to be united in gathering for a study that helps us to reflect about ourselves, about our lives, about our experiences. And today we have the pleasure to have with us our dear friend Tania Stevanin, who previously was with us. So today she's again here, helping to facilitate the team time of confidence. Surely this team is very important for all of us. So before we hand it over to Tania, I would kindly invite all of you so that we together use these initial moments to harmonize ourselves. For those who wish to close your eyes, please do so as we look within ourselves and choose to calm our minds, our hearts, bringing the focus of our attention to this moment, to this ambient, ourselves and all of those also in spirit who are with us, so that we may observe ourselves, considering our immortality, considering the goodness that we all bring within, considering the possibilities of renewal that we bring innate actualization process to help us to do that. And we start this meeting expressing our gratitude towards God, the creator of everything and everyone. Our gratitude to Jesus, the master and guide of humanity. Our gratitude towards the spiritual benefactors who are always with us, helping us to inspiring, to accepting and understanding new concepts so that we can, with their help, to grow, to evolve, and to progress. And as we are united as brothers and sisters in humanity, under the blessings of the divine God, and saying thank you for this unique and special moment in our existences, we start our meeting today. And once more, welcome all of those who are with us, all of those who may be coming through our channel, YouTube and Facebook, and also those who come through Web Rádio Fraternidade. Tania Stevanin is a friend in Spiritism. As we mentioned previously, she already has been with us previously. Currently, she is in Brazil, but she has been for a long time in England. And here she is today to facilitate a team, time of confidence. And we all are with our hearts full of blessings for this unique moment that we can learn with you. So in that way, we hand it over to Tania, and let's learn today about the team. I hand it over to you, Tania.
Thank you very much, Evanise, and it's a great joy to be joining you again. And I'll just say hello to everybody. I don't know what kind of time zones each of you may be. So a big, warm hello and blessings to all of us. When I was offered the opportunity to give this talk and I looked at the theme, the title of the talk, Time of Confidence, it took me a while to consider how to approach it, because there is always ways to interpret something. And the first question that came to my mind was, is this about the times we are living? So should we have confidence in the times that we are going through right now in the present? Or is it more about being confident that things will get better? And I think this is part of this kind of duality is going to be running through my talk today, because answering this question can make the difference between how we experience our present. Because if we have confidence in the present, then we are happier, more reassured, we are more relaxed, we are less anxious. But if we don't have confidence in what is going on around us, the decisions we make, the decisions other people make, that can create a lot of anxiety, fear, and even arguments, because we may clash with other people who differ in their views. But if we are talking about the confidence in the future, does that help us to face the present? Does that give us more reassurance, more resilience to undergo the trials and tribulations that we all go through, and the different kind of conflicting information that we get and experiences that we get, us and other people are getting across the world? If we look at the world at the moment, and we were just talking just before the starting of this activity, that the world has become a very small place. It's not that big anymore. So in the past, we were only affected by what happened to us, our families, maybe our village. But what happened in the next city didn't matter so much because it didn't affect us so directly. Nowadays, something that happens at the other side of the world often has a direct effect on our well-being wherever we are. So, what is this thing about time of confidence? So, let's have a look at the next slide. So, first of all, I'd like to get to some definitions. For example, confidence. Confidence is defined as the state of feeling certain about the truth of something. But is we need to ask whether the truth is really what it seems to be. Who defines the truth? What is the interpretation of truth? I have worked with people who experience hallucinations, and for them, what they were experiencing at the time was the truth. We know cases of people who, under state of mental distress, when they are experiencing auditory or visual hallucinations, they go on to commit crimes because they are absolutely certain that what they believe is happening in the real world. I worked with someone that when we met, we had to meet in a room that didn't have any telephones, any computers, because he was absolutely certain that there were bugs in all the electronic devices that were filming and recording his voice, and the information was going to be used against him. So, confidence, being the state of feeling certain about the truth of something, sometimes needs to be questioned, even challenged. But if we doubt everything all the time, then we are in a constant state of emotional turmoil. So, defining those terms and thinking about them, how they apply to us and how they affect our lives, is quite important. And that takes me to other definitions. For example, self esteem, the confidence in one's own worth, abilities, or morals. If we don't have belief in ourselves, then again, the world becomes a very unsettling place because we are like in a small boat in the wide sea, subject to any fluctuations, any changes that are completely beyond our control. And that's not a very happy place to be. That's not a happy place to exist. So we need to be able to have confidence in ourselves, in our own worth. If I'm thinking I am completely unworthy, then I can become prey to abuse. That's often what happens in cases of abuse. The abuser erodes the self-esteem of the person that's being controlled, or they want to control. So they stop believing in themselves, they stop questioning, even if their experiences of abuse are real or not. And we need to be able to believe in our abilities. If we don't believe in our abilities, then we would never do anything because we would never think that we're able to begin and finish a task. What about self belief, which is also in psychology defined as self efficacy, which is a person's belief in their ability to complete tasks and achieve their goals? Again, if we don't believe that we're able to begin and finish something, then we might never begin. Then our confidence in ourselves, our confidence in the world, in the happiness that we deserve or don't deserve, is eroded. It's also defined as judging oneself to be capable of success increases your chances of actual success. If I start a course and I believe that I can succeed, then during the time I'm studying for the exams, when I am practicing, putting into practice the skills that I'm learning on that course, I need to be able to believe that I can achieve success. Because if I don't, that stops me from even trying, or at least it stops me from succeeding as much as I could to achieving my true potential. What about faith? Faith is defined as complete trust or confidence in someone or something. And that can be very useful when our self-esteem and our self-belief is on the lower side of the spectrum. Because if I can't believe myself enough, but I can believe in the opinion that someone I trust has about me, about my abilities, about my possibilities of succeed, that may breach that gap. The AA, I believe most of you have heard of the AA, Alcoholics Anonymous, uses this with great effect because most people who are addicted to any substance or anything at all who experiences this kind of compulsive behavior, one of the first things that this kind of problematic behavior takes away from us is our belief that we are stronger than the vice, than the addiction. The addiction is stronger than us because most of the times it is. When we get the craving, we use. But faith in God or a higher power, or even without saying it out aloud, faith in that worker that has gone through the experience and beat that addiction and believe that we can do that as well, greatly increases our chances of succeeding and gradually developing enough self-belief to do the work that is necessary, to have the strength to resist that problematic behavior, which then in terms will increase our self-esteem because we will start loving ourselves a bit more, caring for ourselves a bit more, and helping us through that cycle of change. So in the next slide, the next slide, I don't know if we can move on to that. We're having, there we are. So what about confidence? In confidence in what? So if we are talking about times of confidence, what are we being confident about? What is it that we want to change in our perception of the world? Again, let's have a look at the next slide and look at the not so positive side of this process. And here I want to just point out that when I say the not so good side, we are talking about extremes here, okay? So low self-esteem versus overconfidence. We are not talking, so it's about identifying the extremes and working towards the middle, towards being in that place where we have enough self-esteem, but we are not overly confident. Again, taking me back to previous experiences working with people with addiction, sometimes when people have very low self-esteem, they don't believe in themselves, they don't believe that they are worthy. If they don't believe that they are worthy, then they know that they are engaging in a behavior that's self-destructive and they deserve to be destroyed because they are terrible people. That's how they feel. And that doesn't help in their recovery because they need to feel that they are worthy, that they can be helped, that they deserve to be happier, to be able to achieve change and maintain positive change. However, being overly confident is unhealthy as well. Like, for example, so many of my previous clients relapsed because they just received treatment, they stopped drinking for a week while they were in hospital receiving treatment. Next day, they are discharged home, and it is somebody's birthday party, or now, as it is summer in the UK, barbecue season. And they go. And they are completely confident that they now are strong enough after 20 years of drinking 2 bottles of whiskey per day. They now can go to a party surrounded by people who are drinking and just have a glass of pop. And then for the next appointment, the first review appointment, guess what? They are drinking again because they couldn't. To overcome a long problem like that, it takes a long time. So being overly confident is detrimental to us as well, because we need to be able to know where our limits are. Again, the difference between no self-belief to believing that one is invincible. There was an ad in the UK many years ago that played with that concept. They showed someone getting ready to go for a party, going to the pub, enjoying themselves, having a great time, but drinking too much and way too much. And by the end of the evening, they are shown in a very risky situation. Someone dropped something from a high place, and they decided that they could fly to that person, to that thing, and bring it up to them. Of course, they jumped off a building, they died. That's exactly what happens with drivers. Recently, I was in a car with someone. I am in Brazil at the moment. And here in Brazil, the drink driving issue is still at its infancy. Although there are laws, there are regulations, most people who drink still break that law and they drive after they have had a drink. And I heard someone that I love dearly telling me that they drive better after they had a few. That is totally unrealistic because everybody who is in a reasonable state of mind knows that alcohol, as well as many other substances, affect our perceptions, affect our sight, affect our reaction time. So there is no way that someone who's had a lot to drink is a better driver than someone who's sober. So you can see how the extremes can be extremely problematic here. Now I put here positive faith versus negative faith. Many people, the majority of people, associate the word faith with something positive, and so they should, because faith is something that in general implies belief in something good that will happen, either caused by ourselves, our abilities, or by a higher power. However, there is negative faith as well. And negative faith is faith in the devil, for example. There are many, many people who are terrified of the devil. The devil is always in their mind because the devil is the opposing force to God. And the way they talk gives the impression that God has no chance. Because if the devil wants to tempt us, to do harm to us, to trip us, the devil will succeed. Or someone who has absolute faith that they are not going to be cured. They've been diagnosed with a kind of illness that is incurable, and there is nothing that anyone can do because they are going to die. The problem with this kind of belief system is that the same energies that lead to success when we believe that we can be successful can lead into failure if we believe that the only route is failure. So if we pay attention to our belief pattern, then we will be able to tell the difference and do something about it. So the next slide is that imagery, which I thought was very telling because, it's mind the gap. And you can see there that the picture, it depends of how you look at it. You could say this person, whoever is jumping that gap, is totally crazy because they are going to fall. There is no way that I can make that jump. However, there is another possibility, and which is that they will just make it. They will just make that jump. So how do we increase our chances of making the jump? Because a lot of the things we aim for sometimes seem impossible, or at least are very challenging. So we can use what is described as smart goal setting. Everybody has goals, things that we want to achieve. But the problem is often we want to go from where we are to the end result, and the end result's a bit too far away. So rather than jump, we need to build a bridge to get us there. Jumping will get us through the gap into the abyss. Building a bridge will help us surely to get to the other side. There are gaps that we can jump. We can only just make it. And thrill seekers are classic examples of people who keep making the jump only just until they don't. I worked with a client who was a very sad case. He was quite a young man with a young family when I first met him. 10 years, over 10 years, nearly 15 years later, we were having the same conversation after another round of treatment. His liver was totally wrecked. There was no possibility of going back except for a liver transplant, which he was not entitled to because he had never demonstrated any ability to remain alcohol-free following treatment for any length of time. And I had a very interesting conversation with him when he was saying to me, well, Tania, everybody, and here we're talking his family, me in the past, doctors, nurses. He had been admitted to hospital several times on the brink of dying and only just pulled himself back and says, people keep telling me that if I don't stop drinking, I'm going to die. But I haven't died yet. So I don't know if any of you can see the irony of that kind of statement and the sadness, the tragedy of that kind of statement. I am a spiritist. I believe in survival of the death of the physical body. I believe in reincarnation, but one thing that I know for sure is that this body I'm using now can only die once. So I pointed that out to him. I said, friend, the thing is, once you're dead, you're dead. You only die once. But he couldn't grasp that reality. So in his mind, because he had only just made the jump so many times, he was invincible. There was no reason for him to stop drinking because people said he was going to die a year ago, 2 years ago, 10 years ago, and he was still alive. But most of us get that message, get that if we keep only just making it, at some point will fall in the abyss. Or we look and we say, this gap is too big for me. How do I overcome that? How do I build up confidence in achieving what I need to achieve? So SMART goal setting stands for S for specific, M for measurable, A for action, R for realistic, and T for time oriented. So first of all, we need to know what we are aiming for. If our aim is too vague, then we don't know when we achieved it. Or often it is too vague because we don't believe that we can achieve. So we need to bring our objectives back to right where we are. The first tiny little brick on that bridge is still firmly planted where we are, and choose the first step. So the first step could just be attend that appointment that I have booked. If I haven't booked the appointment yet, is to make that call. If I haven't made the call yet, it is to get the telephone number so I can make the call. So you see where I'm getting to. We need to bring it back to the thing that is the first point in that action plan and something that we can absolutely achieve. Then it needs to be measurable. We need to be able to identify whether it is doable or not. If I work again with people with severe anxiety, they can't make that call themselves. So they need help. So if I need help, I need someone to be there with me. But I can identify whether the call has been made or not, either because I made the call or because I identified a friend who can make the call on my behalf while I'm there with them. And many times we have to do that for friends. We had people doing that for us, helping us out, because we don't need to achieve everything on our own. Identifying the help that we need to achieve something is also part of the SMART goal setting. Then we need to take action. If I suffer from extreme phobias and I am claustrophobic, which is the fear of open spaces, and I can't get to the bus stop because that's too much for me. If all I can do is to imagine that I'm getting to the front door and putting my hand on the handle, then that's what I practice doing until I notice my anxiety levels dropping when I imagine that action. So I can then go from imagining it to getting to the front door and just putting my hand on that handle. And I will do that as many times as it needs for my anxiety to go down so that I can then take the next step. But action is important because we can't just imagine things and they magically materialize. And that's why it's important to be realistic when setting a goal. And then it needs to be time oriented. We need to know how long it may take to achieve something. It might not be to the last minute, but at least you have an idea. If I want to get a degree, a university degree, if I then set myself a year to achieve it, that's probably unrealistic because most university degrees take longer than a year. But there are degrees that do take a year, but you need to have skills in place already to do away with some subjects for that degree so that you can move faster. But most of the times you need 2 to 3 years to achieve a degree and a lot of effort. So knowing how long we may need to achieve something also help. So if we can look at the next slide, and this is a lot of the times related to choice. What choice I make on any given day. Here we have 2 examples of choice, to recycle or not to recycle. So one leads to a bit more work, trust that the system of recycling will work after we put the things we need to put in the right bins or bags. The other is, oh, it doesn't work anyway, so I might not do it, and be part of the people who cause that picture of loads of rubbish to be part of that, to happen. The other one is a little trickier because it required a bit more know-how to make the right choice. Because we can buy fruit and vegetables in a plastic bag, or we can choose that plastic is really bad, it shouldn't enter my house, and I'm going to buy everything without plastic being part of it, which is the other picture there. However, our choices have consequences, because if we don't have the full range of information, we may be disappointed or we may feel guilty. So one of the things we need to know when making that choice is that things that are bought without being in a plastic bag, their lifetime between harvest and reaching our fridge is much shorter. So we will need to source for things that are much closer to us. In a plastic bag, they will last longer. So they will stay in the shelves of supermarkets for longer. So there will be less waste. If they are in a supermarket without the right packaging, they go off faster. So some choices are more straightforward, some choices are a little bit less straightforward. So if we go to the next slide, we see that to make the right choice, we need facts. And facts nowadays are not always easy to come by. There is a lot of talk all over the world about misinformation. Before, we used to get our news, our information from newspapers, and there used to be 2 or 3 reliable ones. Usually there was the one that was most reliable, that most people went for. There were news reports on television, and there used to be, here showing my age. There was a time, once upon a time, when Tania was quite young, there were only 4 channels on television, and they were all black and white. Nowadays, we have 200-300 channels, endless sources of places where we can go for information. There is social media. A lot of people are getting their news or information from Facebook, from Twitter, from whatever else is out there, beeping and popping up on our telephone screens. So, how do we solve that problem? We solve not completely, because it is very difficult. During the pandemic, I came across so much misinformation and wrong, really dangerous information being passed on as the truth, which was quite scary. But in the UK, they are going through election. There are several countries this year that are going to have elections as well. And we know that misinformation is a big problem during election periods. Because, of course, there is the opposition parties who want us to think that the other parties are the devil's incarnate, and they are the only ones who can save us from annihilation. But there's always also external powers who don't want us to exercise our free choice in the way that could be detrimental to them, to their own personal interests. So it's very difficult. It kind of brings back the issue of personal responsibility. So not wanting to give advice, but being responsible, I would say the best we can do nowadays is to choose more reliable sources, news media that are more likely to have done the research and to present facts, not opinions. because an opinion is personal. A fact is based on experience that's already happened, numbers, and the two can be mismatched sometimes. But something to bear in mind: to make the right choices, we need to know as many facts as possible, and the facts need to be as reliable as possible. So looking at the next one, which brings back our own personal choices, our own personality into play, we need to consider thoughts. Every person lives in a heaven or hell of our own creation, based on our belief set, our values, our fears. We believe in what we think, and we think what we believe. And that makes it a bit tricky for us to be objective, especially because Spiritism understands that we can be influenced a lot by unseen companions, by spirits. So that, and they will feed us the things that they think we want to hear. So if I have an addiction, they will approach me because it's more likely to make me eat that extra bar of chocolate, make me drink that extra drink, make me eat that extra slice of cake. And that's not necessarily for my own good. So there are often people talk about two voices going on in their minds. One that says, don't, you've had enough cake, you don't need any more. And the other going like, oh, but it was so nice, have another slice. And we usually give in to the temptation. So our thoughts need to be filtered, and we need to identify what is it that we really want. What is the want that is the strongest? Is it the want to be a better person, to be a healthier person, or the want to have that extra slice of cake, which is not always easy to achieve. So if we can move to the next slide, we see that our thoughts, the way we think, determine our behavior and the choices we make. Because our beliefs, again, going back to the self-esteem, self-belief, faith, will determine. So how do we make the right choice? Let's think about the consequences. If I choose A, what is the consequence? Going back to that picture of whether to recycle or not to recycle, I once had a conversation with someone who worked in that kind of environmental setting, and she said most of the things that goes in the bag goes to landfills anyway, the recycling bag. So why bother? And she was part of that system. And I told her, I said, I bother because it is my head that I want to put on the pillow at night and sleep feeling that I've done my bit, because I can't control the choices other people make, but I can control the choices I make on that day. So if we think about the consequences of our choices, it will help us to make sounder choices, because we want to think, I can't change the world outside, but I can change the world within. So let's go to the next slide, which states more or less that the best way to change the world is to change the way we think and feel about ourselves. If we learn to be kinder to ourselves, if we learn to be less prideful and selfish, and kinder and more forgiving. And here we need to put ourselves first, because how can I be kind to someone else if I don't know how to be kind to myself? How can I forgive someone else if I don't forgive myself? But not in a self-indulgent way, in a real way. Because if I understand the concept of kindness, of forgiveness, then it is easier for me to apply it onto others and be part of a better world. Because if I am feeling happier, if I am feeling more reassured, if I'm feeling more positive, I will irradiate that positivity around me as well and create that sense of happiness around me, which will affect my nearest area of existence. And other people may feel that. And I'll come to that a bit later on to explain it a bit further. So, taking us to the next slide, there are a few things that, if we bear in mind, it can help us in this process. So the first one, locus of control. It's an individual's perception about the underlying main causes of events in their life. Or, put in simpler terms, do I believe that my destiny is controlled by myself or by others, by external factors like fate, God, other people? If I believe that I have no control, that all the control is external to me, then life becomes very unsettling. Because then I can't change unless everything changes around me. I can't be happy unless everybody is happy, until all the world wars are over, until the weather is just what I like. But if I believe that that control is within me, that I am able to control my own destiny, then I will find the smart way to set goals and achieve them. And that will help me to be happier and to express that happiness across me. The law of reciprocity is a very interesting one. It's a tendency to feel obliged to do something in return when someone does something for us first. And it can go either way. So, the positive side of it is someone helped me cross the street. I might never see that person again. But if I do see that person in distress, I have a natural instinct, because they helped me, to help them back. Or at least to help someone else cross the street, because I'm kind of indebted to the universe. The other side to it is revenge. Someone does me harm, I want to harm them back. But the important thing to remember here is the other person is going to be under the same pressure as I am. So if I do harm to them, they will be feeling instinctively that they want to harm me back. But if I return goodness for evil, that puts them in turmoil, which I'll talk about in a minute. But it will trigger that part of their minds that's an evolutionary process that makes them feel bad if they return that goodness with evil. Because now there is an instinct that they should return goodness back. The confirmation bias states that it's a tendency to search for, interpret, favor, and recall information in a way that confirms or supports our beliefs or our values. I had an interesting conversation once with a woman on a train. That week, the news had been all about immigrants. And it is still very current in the UK, but that was the beginning of that process. Immigrants coming to the UK on boats. And she sat next to me, clearly an English woman. I clearly not an English person, with an accent. And we started talking. And she started telling me about those news. And she proceeded to tell me that in her belief, all those immigrants should be put back in a boat and thrown at sea. At which point I reminded her gently, not directly, but in a way that I thought was understood, that I was not a native from the UK, so potentially one of them immigrants. But she didn't get it, because in her mind, she could not see the difference. In her mind, there were those unknown faces that deserved to be thrown at sea. And the other side was this nice young woman studying for her university degree, a degree that was the same degree that someone she absolutely adored was doing as well, and who had been kind to her. So she couldn't see the conflict that her mind was in at that time. And confirmation bias is about looking for confirmation for the things we believe. If I believe that people are bad, then my experience of people are going to be more negative. Why? Because I'm going to be primed to only notice something when it confirms my beliefs. So she would only notice that I was a foreigner if I had done anything that displeased her. As I wasn't doing anything that displeased her, she couldn't associate me with not being native from the country she loved. So when we start saying, everybody who I live next door to are terrible people, let's ask ourselves, do I ever live next door to nice people? Do they ever do something that I like? Recently, I was having a conversation about this in one of our study groups about work situations, and most people had examples of starting a new job, meeting some people that are really nice, meeting some people that they really disliked. But then instead of falling out as soon as possible, they gave themselves time to get to know that person a little bit more before they said, okay, that person is not for me. And what they found is that most of the times, over a period of time, they would discover enough qualities on that person that made them become friends at some point. So they challenged that confirmation bias. How do we challenge that? Cognitive dissonance explains how that process works, because the discomfort, cognitive dissonance is the discomfort a person feels when their behavior does not always match with their values or beliefs. So if I am using an extreme example, if I am a racist, but I live in a country where abusing someone just because of the color of their skin or the sexual orientation or the way they speak or their height or color of their hair is not allowed, there are laws protecting those people from me, from my behavior, my beliefs, then I'm forced to behave in a way that is contrary to my beliefs. What does that do? Is because I create a dissonance, a cognitive, a psychological conflict arises from that discrepancy. I feel strongly inclined to resolve that conflict. And usually, the way that conflict is resolved is by starting to believe and feel the way I behave. If I'm forced to behave nicely towards people that I didn't like before, then I feel obliged to identify positive trends in that person that justify me liking them and justify my positive behavior towards them. That can be used towards ourselves as well. If I suffer from very low self-esteem, the way to challenge that is by having a mental list and noticing everything I do or I have in myself that is positive, that I would like in someone else. Often we ask the question, what other people would say that is positive about you? And they always have an example. Oh, my sister likes my hair. My friend says I'm kind and honest. Then by identifying those positive trends in ourselves, we force our self-belief, our self-esteem to raise, because now we enter this cognitive dissonance area where we find positive things about ourselves, so we should like ourselves more. And that helps us to, over time, achieve that. So if we could look at the next slide, we are where our mind is. How we experience the world around us is a reflection of how we think. If everything we identify in the world is negative, is because the thoughts and feelings arising from within us have been negative. So we need to start challenging that. And we don't need to go very far. Most of us will have a roof over our heads, will have food on our plates, will have friends or family, probably live in a world that we have certain freedoms. If we can identify wonderful things in our present life, we can look a bit further afield and identify people who are in a much worse position than us as a matter of comparing their lives and our lives. So if they are in a war zone and I'm not in a war zone, that's a good thing. So maybe I should feel more positive. Maybe there are other more positives in the world. Maybe there are other more positives in the people I'm related to. One of the things we often do, which seems contradictory when working with people with addiction, is to ask them what is good about it. Well, most of the times they say nothing. But if it was really nothing, they wouldn't be doing that. Something is there that they like. They may like the taste, they may like the way it makes them feel in a short space of time. Even if the consequences are terrible afterwards, that tiny blimp of benefit of something good is something that needs to be identified and challenged and replaced with something that is healthier, more long lasting. Some people go from using drugs to meditating every day. A lot of people overcome addiction because they discover their inner selves. They go into their inner selves through meditation, prayer, more positive relationships, and it fills that gap, that need that the substance was feeling at that time. So we need to be able to challenge our thoughts and feelings. And the next slide kind of shows the two extremes, the glass full or empty. So in this case, we are looking at the extreme, but usually the expression is glass half full, half empty. So if I look at a glass that only is filled up to the half of it, some people will say it's half full. Some will say it's half empty. It's a personal choice, a personal perception. And we need to choose which one we are going to go for. Are we going to fill our glasses with more optimism, more resilience, more kindness, more forgiveness? Or empty it, filling it with fear, anxiety, negativity instead? That is very much our choice. So the next slide illustrates that a bit more, because the reality is the good we do to others in the end reverse back to us. And others here is not just them over there, it's us as well. We are part of these others. We are one of the others, because often we see ourselves as a third person kind of thing. We don't see ourselves as we really are. We were created to be happy, to be healthy, to express light, not the other way around. And so has everybody else. And we are all in this journey, some a bit further ahead, some a bit behind, but we are all in this journey. So if I decided to be today a slightly better version of myself than I was yesterday, I will be making the world around me a better world. And that will reverberate and reach out to other people as well. So if we go to the next slide, it kind of makes you think, how do I achieve that? It seems such a burden. And again, there is the possibility that this stone is going to roll down and crush that person. But we can also look at it as that person's determination is taking that stone up one little step at a time. And I like to think that that person used smart goal setting to choose which stone to take up that hill. And they know they can do it, not by jumping the gap, but by taking one step at a time, rolling that stone up the hill. And this is what a time of confidence to me represents. It doesn't represent that everything in the world I live is perfect or is okay. It's not an unrealistic view. What it represents is that it gives us each a big stone to climb up a hill with. It's not going to be an easy journey. It's going to be a challenge, but one that when we reach the top, it will have increased our confidence in ourselves, in our abilities, in the world in which we live, in the abilities of others, and will make us feel great for having taken up that challenge. So that stone, let's put the word fear, negativity, anything that we want to address and to get rid of. Or we can put hope, fortitude, achievement on that stone. Whatever we put on that stone, whatever we call it, let's make sure it's something that when we get to the top of that mountain, we look back and say, I've done it. I can have confidence in myself, and if I am a better person, then the world in which we live is a better world for that as well. And then we go and pick up another stone and face another challenge. And that's how we make ourselves better and the world better. And the final slide is just a big thank you to all of you who've been listening to me, to this talk. And I do hope that it has brought some thinking opportunities into the picture and helped you to see the opportunities of self-development that is presented to each one in our lifetime. So thank you very much for listening. And as we have reached the final slide and the end of the talk, we are going to concentrate, maybe close our eyes and join in prayer once again, lifting our thoughts up, not just to the higher power, but creating a bridge between us and the higher powers, trusting that we are able to do that. Being beings of light as we are, we connect with the brighter light of those who have taken that journey before us, who know better than we do, but who are often around us to help us in this journey. Thanking for the help and inspiration we received today for the talk, for the understanding that each one has received in our own minds, in our own ways, the protection that each one has received in our own homes, wherever we are, and for inspiration and inner strength that will take us to the next step of our journey towards the higher spheres, towards the greater light. We say another thank you to all who have participated today in this activity and ask for blessings for all of us to continue our journey. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed. Our gratitude for your presence, Tania, amongst us, and helping us to reflect about this theme, which surely, as you said, is quite broad, but bringing you specifically towards the point that you presented. Thank you very much. Thank you very much for all of those who have been with us. Also those who later on may reach these videos, which are recorded in our YouTube and Facebook channels and available to everyone. And hope that we have other opportunities in the future, Tania. For now, we say thank you and wish you well, much peace to you and to your family, and also those who have been with us. Thank you very much for this unique opportunity. In that way, we say bye-bye.